Welcome to Dark Secret Vale, the home of twisted confessions and chilling horror stories. We exist in the spaces between what you know and what you fear. The stories we share here are not fabrications. They are not the stuff of campfire tales. They are real-life accounts, submitted by people from all walks of life, who have stared into the abyss and felt something stare back. Tonight, we turn our attention to a unique group of individuals. They are the guardians of the sky, the smiling faces that serve your drinks and ensure your safety. They navigate time zones like the rest of us navigate city streets. They are long-haul flight attendants. They have seen the world from above, but they have also seen things that cannot be explained by any safety manual. They walk the aisles of the night, bearing witness to secrets whispered at 35,000 feet and horrors that have no business leaving the ground. What you're about to hear are 5 confessions from these professionals. Accounts of things that should not be shared from the silent, sleeping world above the clouds. Before we begin, make sure you are subscribed to Dark Secret Vale and have hit the notification bell. What you are about to hear may not just haunt your dreams, it may forever change the way you view that empty seat beside you, the dimmed cabin lights, and the endless, silent dark outside your window. Let us begin. It was the red-eye from Seoul to Atlanta, a 14-hour marathon through the night. For Anya, a flight attendant with a decade of experience, it was just another Tuesday. The cabin was a study in quiet exhaustion. Most of the 300 passengers were already asleep, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of seat-back screens. The air was still and cool, smelling faintly of recycled air and disinfectant. Anya was working the galley at the rear, methodically restocking coffee supplies for the inevitable early morning rush. The only sounds were the perpetual, comforting drone of the engines and the occasional snore from a passenger in 42C. During her final walkthrough before her break, a flicker of movement caught her eye. In seat 34B, a window seat in the center section, an elderly woman was slowly, deliberately, fastening her seatbelt. Anya paused. She had done the final head count herself. That seat, according to the manifest in her own eyes, was empty. It had been empty since takeoff. The woman was pale, her skin almost translucent in the dim light, and she wore a simple, old-fashioned lavender dress. She didn't look at Anya, she just stared out the window into the impenetrable blackness. Anya shook her head, blaming the fatigue and the tricky cabin lighting. She continued to the back, dismissing it as a trick of the mind. But the image stuck with her. An hour later, on another routine pass, she couldn't help but glance at 34B. The woman was still there, but now she was turned in her seat, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, staring directly down the aisle, directly at Anya. Her eyes were dark, hollow pits. A cold dread, sharper than any she'd ever felt, prickled down Anya's spine. The temperature around the seat seemed to drop several degrees. She quickly looked away, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You're tired," she told herself. "You're seeing things." But when she mustered the courage to look back, the woman was gone. The seat was empty, the seatbelt securely fastened across the vacant cushion. A wave of nausea washed over her. She checked the lavatories, the galleys, nothing. The passengers around seat 34 were all deep asleep, undisturbed. Desperate for a rational explanation, Anya went to the cockpit to speak with the captain during a quiet moment. She didn't mention the woman. Instead, she casually asked, "Any unusual notes on the manifest for 34B? Last-minute change or anything?" The captain scanned his paperwork. Weird. There's a note here from ground ops. An elderly passenger was originally booked in 34B. A Ms. Alara Voss. She passed away in the terminal from a heart attack just before boarding. They offloaded her luggage. The seat was supposed to have been blocked. Anya's blood ran cold. She managed a weak nod and returned to the cabin. As she passed row 34, she saw it. On the empty seat cushion in 34B, the seatbelt was buckled tight, as if someone were holding it down. Anya never reported what she saw. What would she say? She finished the flight in a numb haze, avoiding the entire section around row 34. The woman, Ms. Voss, never appeared again. But Anya couldn't shake the feeling that the passenger had simply been trying to get to her final destination. She had paid for her ticket, after all. Now, on every night flight, Anya makes a point of never looking too long at the empty seats. She's learned that empty doesn't always mean unoccupied. This moment wasn't a ghost story, it was a chilling reminder that some passengers never truly disembark. But a spectral traveler was not the most dangerous thing one could encounter in the sky. For another attendant, the true horror wasn't a ghost trying to get home, but something very much alive that had no business being there. Mark was on the last leg of a brutal triple-header, Dubai to Sydney. The Airbus A380 was a behemoth, a double-decker city in the sky, and it was packed. He was managing the premium economy cabin, a section of relative calm compared to the bustling economy below. The meal service was over, the cabin lights were dimmed to a soft amber, and a collective, sleepy silence had fallen over the passengers. Mark was doing a final trash collection, moving quietly down the aisle with a black garbage bag, his movements automated by years of practice. As he approached row 14, he noticed the men in seat A, the aisle seat. He was awake, which wasn't unusual in itself. But he was perfectly, unnervingly still. He wasn't watching a movie, wasn't reading, wasn't sleeping. He was just sitting upright, his hands resting on his knees, staring blankly at the seat back in front of him. He was gaunt, with sharp cheekbones and deep-set eyes that seemed to absorb the low light. Mark gave him a polite, professional smile. "Anything for the trash, sir?" The man didn't blink, didn't turn his head. He simply slowly, deliberately, raised his index finger to his lips in a universal sign for SHHH. A cold shiver, entirely separate from the cabin's air conditioning, traced its way down Mark's spine. He moved on quickly. For the next few hours, Mark felt a persistent, crawling sensation between his shoulder blades. Every time he was in the galley, he'd glance down the aisle. The man in 14A hadn't moved a muscle. He maintained the same rigid posture, the same vacant stare. It was as if he were a mannequin. Mark mentioned it quietly to a senior colleague, who just laughed it off. "Weirdos are part of the job, kid. Just be glad he's quiet." But Mark couldn't shake it. During a later walkthrough, he saw something that made his stomach clench. The man's boarding pass had slipped from his seat back pocket and lay on the floor. As Mark bent to pick it up, he saw the name. It was printed, clearly, for a flight from London to New York. A flight that had landed over 12 hours ago. This was the wrong aircraft, the wrong route, the wrong everything. Mark's mind raced. Stowaway. Mistaken passenger. The logic didn't add up. Security was too tight. He decided to confront the men, to ask to see his passport and boarding pass. He approached the seat, his mouth dry. "Excuse me, sir. I need to see your boarding pass and identification, please." The man's head swiveled towards him. It wasn't a human turn. It was a slow, mechanical pivot, his neck making a faint, dry cracking sound. His eyes, now fully visible, held no light, no consciousness. They were like polished stones. His lips parted, and a voice, low and rasping, like stones grinding together, emerged. It wasn't a whisper, but it was devoid of any emotion. "I am not a passenger," the thing in the seat said. "I am an auditor." Before Mark could process this, the auditor, returned his head to its forward position, resuming his statue-like pose, the conversation clearly over. Terrified, Mark immediately reported everything to the captain and the senior flight attendant. They ran the manifest, cross-referenced everything. According to every system, seat 14A was occupied by a Mr. David Chen, a perfectly legitimate passenger on this flight. When two air marshals on board approached the seat to question him, they found it empty. The seatbelt was neatly folded on the cushion. There was no trace of the man. No one in the surrounding rows had seen him leave. To this day, Mark doesn't know what an auditor audits on a flight over the Indian Ocean. He only knows that something can be on your plane, listed on your manifest, and be utterly, terrifyingly wrong. This encounter wasn't about a security breach, it was the horrifying realization that the manifest doesn't list everything, or everyone, on board. The sky holds more than just lost souls and silent watchers. Sometimes, the danger isn't a single entity, but a pervasive, creeping wrongness that infects the very air, as our next attendant discovered over the vast, empty expanse of the Pacific. For Lena, a flight attendant on the Boeing 777, routine was a religion. The Tokyo to San Francisco route was her regular beat, and she knew every rivet, every squeak in the cabin, every flicker of the lighting system. It was a clear night, the stars were sharp and bright out the windows, and the flight was so smooth it felt like they were suspended in dark, still water. They were about 5 hours into the journey, over the featureless black of the northern Pacific. Lena was in the mid-galley, preparing a bottle for a fussy infant, the soft, rhythmic hum of the engines a familiar lullaby. As she reached for a napkin, she glanced down the dimly lit port-side aisle. Something was wrong. It took her brain a moment to register what her eyes were seeing. Between rows 35 and 36, where there should have been an unbroken line of window seats and storage compartments, there was a door. It was a standard aircraft door, complete with a small, shaded window and a lever handle. But on this model of the 777, there was no door there. According to the aircraft schematics she'd studied, the emergency exits were fore and aft. This was impossible. Her first thought was a maintenance error, a panel left unsecured. She finished her task and walked over, intending to simply report it. As she got closer, she saw that the door's status indicator showed a solid, unwavering red. Locked. A cold knot tightened in Lena's stomach. She ran her fingers over the cool, painted metal. It was real. She leaned in, peering through the small, thick window. Instead of the pitch black of night she expected to see, the view was a murky, swirling gray, like thick fog illuminated by a dim, sourceless light. She could see nothing else. Confused and unnerved, she went to the cockpit on a pretext, asking the pilots if they were experiencing any unusual weather or pressure readings. They confirmed everything was perfectly normal. When she returned to the spot, the door was still there. This time, the status light was green. Unlocked. And as she watched, frozen in place. A soft, wet thump came from the other side, as if something heavy and soft had slumped against the door from the outside. Lena stumbled back, her training screaming at her to alert the crew, but a deeper, primal instinct told her to stay silent. The thumping stopped, replaced by a new sound, a slow, deliberate scraping. It was the sound of something dragging itself along the outside of the fuselage, moving from the door towards the tail. It was followed by a faint, high-pitched whisper that seemed to seep through the door's seal, not a voice, but the sound of air being forced through a constricted space. It was the sound of something breathing, just on the other side of the thin metal shell that separated her from the void. The green light on the door began to flicker rapidly. Lena didn't wait. She ran to the forward galley, grabbed a roll of heavy-duty service tape, and sprinted back. Without a second thought, she crisscrossed the tape over the door and its handle, sealing it shut in a frantic, haphazard X. She then woke the senior purser and, in hushed, frantic tones, explained what she'd seen and heard. The purser, a skeptical veteran, humored her and went to look. The aisle between rows 35 and 36 was an unbroken line of seats. The door was gone. There was no tape on the floor, no sign it had ever been there. Lena was pulled from duty for the remainder of the flight for extreme fatigue. She never saw the door again, but she knows it's there, on some planes, on some nights. She knows that the schematics don't show everything, and that some doors aren't meant for exiting, but for keeping things out. Or perhaps, for keeping them in. This was not a malfunction, it was a glimpse into a geography of the sky that isn't on any map, a reminder that some doors should never, ever be opened. Yet, a mysterious door is a fixed point, a location of terror. But what happens when the horror isn't confined to a single spot? When it becomes a contagious dread, seeping into the minds of everyone on board. The red-eye from London to Johannesburg was always a quiet one. For the crew, it was a long, dark haul with few disturbances. This particular night, Flight 212 was only two-thirds full, creating pockets of emptiness throughout the cabin. Elias, working the business class section, appreciated the calm. He served the final rounds of champagne, dimmed the lights, and watched as the privileged passengers reclined into their pods, their private worlds of work or entertainment glowing softly around them. The plane settled into the deep night, the gentle snores of the passengers a testament to collective surrender to sleep. About 3 hours into the flight, a woman in 7A sat bolt upright, her face pale and slick with sweat. She frantically pressed her call button. Elias arrived to find her trembling, her hands gripping the armrests like vices. "I'm sorry," she stammered, "I had the most awful dream." There was a little boy. He was standing in the aisle, just staring at me. He had no eyes. Elias, well versed in dealing with anxious flyers, offered her water and reassurance, blaming it on turbulence or a bad meal. He thought nothing of it. 20 minutes later, a man across the aisle in 6F woke with a similar, panicked start, reporting the exact same dream. A little boy, in the aisle, with hollow, empty sockets where his eyes should be. A coincidence, Elias told himself. Nerves. Then it happened again. And again. Over the next hour, a quiet panic began to ripple through the slumbering cabin. One by one, passengers were waking, agitated and fearful, all describing the same vivid, horrifying vision. It wasn't just business class, reports were coming from premium economy and economy as well. The other flight attendants were getting spooked. They moved through the cabin, their professional smiles strained, offering comfort that felt increasingly hollow. The atmosphere grew thick with a shared, unspoken dread. The cabin, once a place of rest, now felt like a ward for a collective nightmare. Elias was in the galley, preparing more water, when a little girl, no more than 5, was led by her mother to use the lavatory. The girl stopped and pointed a chubby finger down the darkened aisle. "Who's that sad boy, Mommy?" she asked, her voice clear and innocent. Elias's blood ran cold. He followed her gaze. There was nothing there. Just empty seats in the dim, amber lighting. "What does he look like, sweetie?" the mother asked, humoring her. The little girl frowned. "He's crying. But he has no eyes." "How does he cry with no eyes?" At that moment, Elias felt it, a sudden, profound drop in temperature, a cold spot that centered on the exact spot the girl was pointing to. It was gone in a second, but the chill lingered in his bones. The dream wasn't just in their heads. It was a phantom being broadcast through the sleeping minds of the entire aircraft. The rest of the flight was conducted in a state of high tension. Passengers were afraid to sleep. The crew kept the lights slightly brighter, trying to ward off the collective unease. They never saw a physical manifestation of the boy. But the shared experience was undeniable, a bizarre and terrifying statistical anomaly that bound the passengers and crew of Flight 212 together in a way no one had asked for. After landing, Elias heard from ground services that a few passengers had formally complained about the disturbing atmosphere on the flight. He knew the truth was far worse than they could ever put into a complaint form. He now believes that on certain flights, over certain ancient lands and deep oceans, the barriers between waking and dreaming can grow thin, and a lonely spirit can find a way to visit hundreds of people at once. This was not a series of bad dreams, it was a haunting on an industrial scale, a spectral broadcast that proved terror needs no single waking mind to host it. Lost souls, silent auditors, phantom doors, and shared nightmares, but our final confession is perhaps the most chilling of all. It's a story that suggests the true horror isn't something you see or dream, but something you become a part of, willingly or not. This story doesn't come from the cabin. It comes from the one place on the aircraft that is supposed to be a sanctuary of absolute control, of unshakable logic. This is the confession of Captain Eva Rostova, and it concerns her final flight as a co-pilot, a decade ago. It was a routine cargo run from Anchorage to Tokyo, flying a dated but reliable 747 freighter. The plane was empty of people, its cavernous main deck packed with pallets of perishable goods. The night was brutally clear, the stars like pinpricks in a black velvet sheet over the North Pacific. In the cockpit, it was just Eva and the grizzled, veteran captain, Miles. The hum of the instruments was a familiar song, the endless dark outside the windshield, a comfortable blanket. They were 3 hours out, a tiny speck of light in an ocean of darkness, when the TCAS, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, emitted a single, soft chime. A yellow diamond appeared on the screen, indicating a nearby aircraft at their altitude, 10 miles ahead and closing. Eva frowned. There was no scheduled traffic on this remote corridor. She adjusted the radar range. The diamond held its position. Probably a ghost track, Miles grumbled, not looking up from his paperwork. Atmospheric bounce. This old bird gets them. But then, the diamond began to blink. Its reported altitude started to flicker, then dropped. Rapidly. It was now indicating the intruder was descending directly into their flight path. "Captain," Eva said, her voice tight. Miles looked up, his irritation turning to focus. The system chimed again, this time more urgently. A synthesized voice echoed in the cockpit, "Traffic. Traffic." Eva's eyes darted between the screen and the blackness ahead. She saw nothing. The reported altitude on the intruder was now holding steady, exactly at their altitude. 0 feet separation. The yellow diamond turned a glaring, insistent red. The cockpit filled with the system's final, strident warning, "Climb. Climb. Climb now." It was a resolution advisory, a direct command. Miles, his face a mask of stone, grabbed the yoke. "I have control." He initiated a steep, emergency climb. The G-force pressed Eva back into her seat. As the plane nosed upward, she stared, horrified, into the void where the system said the other aircraft was. There was nothing. No running lights, no shape against the stars. Just nothing. As they leveled off, the RA cleared. The red diamond vanished from the screen. A heavy, trembling silence filled the cockpit. They had avoided a collision with a ghost. Eva let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That's when she saw it. As they had climbed, they had passed through the intruder's reported position. And for a single, heart-stopping second, the plane's external navigation lights had illuminated something. Not another aircraft. Not another aircraft. There was no fuselage, no wings. Instead, flickering in and out of existence in the brief flash of their strobes, was a vast, indistinct shape. It was organic, pulsing slightly, like a massive, floating jellyfish made of shadow and static. Woven deep within its form, she could see faint, phosphorescent lines that looked eerily like circuitry, and at its core, a dark, swirling vortex that seemed to absorb the very light around it. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, leaving only the pristine, empty night. Miles was staring straight ahead, his knuckles white on the yoke. He had seen it too. In a hoarse whisper, he said, Don't ever write that in the log." They completed the flight to Tokyo without another word about it. The official record showed they performed an evasive maneuver due to a false TAS reading. Miles retired 6 months later. Eva never flew with him again. She went on to become a captain herself, but she never forgot. She has spent years piecing together whispers from other pilots who fly the remote routes, tales of void signatures, and atmospheric organisms. She no longer believes they avoided a ghost plane. She believes they passed through a creature that lives in the upper atmosphere, a being that exists outside our understanding of biology and physics, a predator that doesn't hunt for flesh, but perhaps for energy, for data, or for something we cannot even comprehend. The sky isn't empty. It's a wilderness. And we are not the only hunters. This was not a near miss, it was a sighting. A terrifying glimpse into the true ecology of the sky, proving that the greatest horrors are not in the cabin, but waiting outside in the dark. 5 stories. 5 confessions from the void. Anya's spectral passenger, forever trying to get home. Mark's silent auditor, a being with a purpose we cannot fathom. Lena's unregistered door, a threshold to something that should never be crossed. The shared, sleeping terror of Elias's passengers, haunted by a single, sorrowful vision. And finally, Eva's chilling revelation from the cockpit, that the empty sky is anything but. These are not isolated incidents. They are threads in the same dark tapestry. They show us one undeniable, unsettling truth: the world we think we know, the the routines we trust, the very laws of physics we rely on, they are all a thin veneer. And at 35,000 feet, that veneer is at its most fragile. There is more lurking just out of sight, in the silent spaces between the clouds, in the static between radio transmissions, in the corner of your eye when you glance at an empty seat. The professionals who navigate this realm know a secret they rarely share: some flights don't just cross oceans and continents. They cross into territories of the unexplained. So, the next time you fasten your seatbelt and the cabin lights dim, remember these stories. When you hear an unexpected chime in the night, or feel a sudden, inexplicable chill, trust that instinct. Look at your fellow passengers and wonder, are they all truly what they seem? Look out the window into the profound blackness and ask yourself, what else is looking back? Keep your eyes open. Your guard up. You are not just a passenger on an aircraft. You are a visitor in a vast, uncharted, and often unforgiving domain. You can't ignore the sounds, the movements, the feelings that something is amiss. Trust your instincts, no matter what. The veil is thin. And we are here to pull it back. If you have your own story, a horror from the skies, a dark secret from your workplace, an unexplained terror from your own life, do not let it fester in the dark. Share it in the comments below. Your confession could be the key to unlocking someone else's nightmare. It might just be featured in a future horror log. If you have the courage to face what lies hidden, then subscribe to Dark Secret Veil. Hit the notification bell, and don't miss the next unsettling tale we uncover from the shadows. This has been a chilling episode from Dark Secret Veil. Until next time, keep your wits about you. You never know what's on the flight manifest.